My family shut my 10-year-old daughter out of Christmas dinner, and she walked home alone in the freezing dark. They thought I'd stay quiet. They thought I'd stay scared. They were wrong. My name is Audrey. I'm 34 years old. My daughter Nora is 10. And the week before Christmas permanently broke my family apart. We were living in a tiny one-bedroom apartment while I was in the middle of a brutal divorce and custody fight. She had the bedroom. I slept on the couch. The place was loud, old, and imperfect, but it was safe. It was ours. I worked nights in the ER, extra shifts, double shifts, holiday shifts. Everything went toward legal fees and stability. Because in a custody case, stable isn't a word, it's a weapon. One mistake and you lose everything. My parents knew that. Nora spent the week before Christmas making gifts by hand. Paper cards, newspaper wrapping, little drawings, no complaints, no sadness, just excitement. She kept saying, "Mom, they're going to love these." Christmas Day, I had a 12-hour night shift. My parents offered to take her to dinner and bring her home in the morning. They sounded warm, normal, loving. I believed them. I packed her coat, gloves, scarf, and an old phone with only 2 numbers in it, mine and my best friend Maggie's. "Just in case," I told her. She smiled and hugged me. "Mom, it's Grandma and Grandpa. It's fine." That was the last time I saw her smile that week. At their house, everything looked perfect. Lights, music, food, laughter. She walked in holding her bag of gifts. Then the tone changed, whispers, low voices. Her name spoken in another room. My mother came back with that calm smile, the polite one people use when they're about to do something cruel and call it reasonable. She told my daughter there was no room at the table, too many guests, too many people, no space. She told her to leave the gifts on the porch. My father said nothing. My brother looked away, and the door closed. One empty chair inside, one child outside. It was 28 degrees. My daughter didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't argue. She just turned around and started walking, nearly 2 miles, in the dark. On Christmas night, past warm houses, past families, past lights and laughter. She carried every gift with her. When she got home, the apartment was cold and dark. The heat was low. No tree, no music, no people. She tried calling me. No answer. I was in a trauma bay. She called Maggie. Then she left me a voicemail. "Mom, they said there was no room. I walked home. I'm okay. Merry Christmas." I heard it 4 hours later in a hospital break room. No calls from my parents, no messages, no explanations, no apologies. Just my daughter's voice, calm, quiet, trying to be brave. Maggie had already picked her up, wrapped her in a blanket, fed her dinner, made her safe. I finished my shift, not because I was okay, but because I knew what I was about to do next would change everything. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I made one phone call. 5 hours later, my parents received a certified legal letter. No threats, no drama, no emotion, just consequences. Because family doesn't mean access, blood doesn't mean entitlement, and love doesn't lock a child out in the cold. They thought I needed them. They thought I was trapped. They thought silence meant weakness. But they forgot one thing. I'm a mother first. And when you choose to harm my child, you don't get a second chance. You get distance, boundaries, and a future without us in it. Sometimes the strongest response isn't anger. It's removal. They thought I was powerless. They thought I was dependent. They thought I had no leverage. They were wrong. And they proved it in writing. I didn't call my mother. I didn't call my father. I didn't call my brother. There was nothing left to say, only proof to collect. When my shift ended at 6 a.m., I sat in my car in the hospital garage with the engine running, heat blasting, phone in my hand. I scrolled through my contacts and stopped on one name, Ruth Ashford, my great-grandmother. I didn't call yet. Not that early. But I knew I would. Because my parents had lived for years in a house they thought they owned, and they had never read the documents that said otherwise. At 8:14 a.m., my mother called. I answered, and I recorded it. Her voice was calm, sweet, almost cheerful. She said my daughter left on her own. She said kids are dramatic. She said she tried to rearrange things. I told her my daughter walked home alone in the cold because she was told there was no space for her. Her tone changed instantly. Suddenly it was chaos. Suddenly it was excuses. Suddenly it was pressure. Then came the threat. If I made this public, if I made this a problem, if I didn't stay quiet, they wouldn't help with custody. They wouldn't support me. They would tell the court I was unstable. I saved the recording, and I created a folder called Evidence. Then the texts started. My brother. Not calls. Texts. Safe distance. No accountability. Stop being dramatic. She's fine. Apologize to Mom. You're going to ruin everything. I'll tell your ex's lawyer you're unstable. Screenshot. Save. Evidence folder. Then one message came in by mistake. Meant for my mother. She won't do anything. She needs us for the custody case. She's trapped. I stared at it for a long time. Then I saved that too, because people who think you're trapped always reveal themselves. By mid-morning, the story was spreading, their version, that I abandoned my child, that I caused drama, that I overreacted. Family members called asking me to let it go. So I asked one question. Did they tell you my 10-year-old walked home alone in the dark on Christmas night? Silence. Every time. That night I opened Airbnb. I typed in my parents' address. And there it was. A rental listing. Basement apartment. 5-star reviews. Superhost badge. $89 per night. Host name. Janet A., my mother. Running a rental business inside a house she didn't own. A house that legally belonged to my great-grandmother. A basement she told everyone was unsafe. I screenshotted everything. The next morning, I called Grandma Ruth. She listened quietly as I told her everything. The rejection, the walk home, the voicemail, the texts, the Airbnb listing. She didn't cry. She didn't react. She calculated. Then she said, "That house has more chairs than people, Audrey, and I paid for every one of them." When I told her about the Airbnb income, she went silent again. Then, "So she's making money from my house and turning away my great-grandchild on Christmas." Not a question. A judgment. She told me to send the screenshots. Then she said one sentence that changed everything. "I'm calling my lawyer this morning." Because the house wasn't my parents' house. It never was. It was held in a trust. A trust with one rule. The property must serve the family, without exclusion, and they had violated it. Legally, financially, morally. They thought they owned safety. They thought they owned control. They thought they owned me. But they forgot something. Paperwork is stronger than power. Evidence is stronger than threats. And a mother protecting her child is stronger than any family hierarchy. They thought I was trapped. What they didn't know was that the door they closed on my daughter was the door that opened everything else. While my mother was posting blessed family photos online, the same table my daughter was pushed away from, a woman in a nursing home 2 hours away was on the phone with her lawyer. And the clock started. That afternoon, the attorney called me. Calm voice, precise words, no drama. He explained the truth. The house was never my parents' property. They had no deed, no lease, no ownership, no legal claim. They were simply allowed to stay there, and that permission could be revoked. Then he told me what my great-grandmother had ordered. A formal eviction notice, 30 days to leave, and a trust amendment. My parents were removed as beneficiaries. I was named the sole beneficiary. My daughter was named next in line. Just like that, everything shifted. Then came the second issue, the Airbnb listing. The attorney explained that earning money from trust property without permission could be considered financial misuse. I sent every screenshot, every timestamp, every record, every review. His reply was simple. Received, we're proceeding. 2 days later, I drove with my daughter to visit my great-grandmother. She was waiting in the common room, small, sharp-eyed, calm. My daughter hugged her, and my great-grandmother said quietly, "The next Christmas will be different." Then she signed. The amendment, the eviction notice, the documents, the future. Then she wrote a short note in her own handwriting. I gave you my home so family would always have a place. You turned away a child on Christmas. That is not what my home is for. It went into the envelope, certified mail. Back home, I organized everything. The voicemail, the photos, the recordings, the texts, the threats, the Airbnb listing, the reviews, the financial proof. Evidence isn't emotion, it's structure, and structure wins. 9 days later was custody court, fluorescent lights, quiet room, paper files, no drama. My records were clean, my job history solid, my housing documented, my stability proven, no testimony from my parents, no statements, no threats followed through. The judge ruled, full custody. My daughter stayed with me. That same day, a certified envelope landed on my parents' porch. They signed for it. 30 days to vacate, legal notice, trust amendment, reality. My mother called. Her voice was no longer confident, no longer controlled, no longer sharp, just scared. This says we have to leave, I answered calmly. It's not your house. It never was. She said she'd fight it. I told her the documents were valid. The evaluations were complete. The signatures were legal. The process was finished. Then she asked the only question that mattered. Where are we supposed to go? And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to carry that burden for her. Because power built on control collapses fast. Control built on silence breaks. And family built on hierarchy isn't family at all. They thought I was trapped. What they didn't understand was that the moment they closed the door on my child was the moment they lost every door they thought they owned. When my parents received the certified eviction notice, the 30-day clock started. There was no take-back, no conversation, no negotiation, just the law in a sealed envelope and a handwritten note from my 89-year-old great-grandmother reminding them exactly how many chairs were at that table. I picked up my daughter from school that day. She didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. The Facebook show. Instead of apologizing, my mother went public. Please pray for our family, she wrote. She claimed I was manipulating an elderly woman to take their home. Comments poured in. Friends offered support. Strangers called me heartless. Not one person asked about my 10-year-old daughter, left out in the cold on Christmas. Not one. I did nothing publicly. I documented everything. Posts, comments, texts, timestamps. Every piece of proof went into my receipts folder. Truth waits for its time. It does not perform on Facebook. Legal defense. My great-grandmother's attorney, Martin Haywood, was calm, methodical, precise. My parents were permissive occupants, legally allowed to stay only at her pleasure. That pleasure could end immediately. I also sent him proof of the Airbnb rental of the basement, which had been done without consent. Screenshots, listings, reviews, all documented. 2 letters went out. Eviction notice, 30 days to vacate. Trust amendment, I became sole beneficiary. My daughter the contingent beneficiary. The law and documentation were on our side. The first week, relatives called. Just apologize. Think of their age. Don't tear the family apart. I asked if anyone had asked how my daughter was doing. Silence. No concern. Not a single call in 5 days. Grandma Ruth called every evening. Short, steady words. Hold on. Martin is handling it. You just hold on. Courage and promise. That night, I told my daughter, you are not a problem. You have never been a problem. Her trust in me stayed intact. The promise was simple. No one will ever make her feel invisible in her own family again. Legal pushback. Janet hired a lawyer. He challenged the notice, citing implied tenancy. Martin responded with 4 pages of evidence. Trust deed, notarized amendments, physician affidavit confirming Grandma Ruth's competency, and the Airbnb documentation with estimated $52,000 in unauthorized income. Janet's lawyer quickly realized the fight was unwinnable. She fired him. The final shift. Weeks later, my parents went to visit Grandma Ruth. They were denied entry. Front desk staff followed Ruth's instructions. No visitors. After decades of entitlement, they no longer had access. The control they thought was theirs had vanished. Kyle, my brother, called me mid-January, voice shaken. I didn't know about the Airbnb. Mom, we just live here. I reminded him. You've lived in a house you don't own. You threatened my child on Christmas. Don't speak for your kids. He went silent. Victory. Legal and moral. The documentation didn't lie. The law was clear. Grandma Ruth was competent. The trust was amended. Custody, property, family legacy, all secured. Some people call it elder abuse. Some call it manipulation. I call it protecting a child and the truth. Because when a 90-year-old woman counts her chairs, she remembers who belongs at her table. And when she speaks through law and love, even decades of entitlement crumble. The denial. Janet arrived at the nursing home expecting doors to open. They didn't. Supervisors politely denied her entry. Her tears didn't work. Security was mentioned. She left, humiliated, calling Gerald to vent that I'd poisoned our grandmother. She tried Grandma Ruth directly. 15 seconds in, Ruth's words were firm. No misunderstanding. You turned away a child on Christmas. You rented my basement without telling me. This conversation is over. Talk to Martin. Every visit, every word, was logged by staff. One more timestamp, one more entry in the growing file of proof. The demand letter, February 3rd, the second envelope arrived. Certified, return receipt requested. This wasn't a notice to vacate, it was a financial reckoning. Airbnb records subpoenaed legally showed $52,340 in unauthorized income from Janet's rental of Grandma Ruth's basement. Martin's letter cited the trust clause and Virginia law on conversion of trust property, requesting repayment within 60 days or a civil lawsuit. Evidence included listings, reviews, cached pages, everything. Janet couldn't erase the internet. She couldn't erase the money. The family collapse. Gerald finally admitted the truth. Funds spent on trucks, cruises, life they didn't own. Kyle realized his mother had lied about the source of gifts. Confrontations followed. Janet tried to blame Gerald. He didn't back down. The facade was cracking. Tiffany, my sister, reached out, unaware of the Airbnb income. I directed her to Grandma Ruth's lawyer. Mercy wasn't mine. It was Ruth's. Even Janet's social media couldn't protect her image. A post questioning ownership of the basement was quickly deleted. The truth didn't need an audience. It had its own momentum. Legal action. The 30-day deadline expired. Janet texted, "We're not leaving. This is home." I forwarded it to Martin. He filed the unlawful detainer action Monday morning with every exhibit attached. Trust deed, 30-day notice, certified mail receipt, physician affidavit, notarized amendments, and the Airbnb documentation. Process servers delivered summonses. Gerald received his copy first. Janet wasn't home. The law didn't negotiate. It enforced. The aftermath. Janet tried leveraging sympathy, calling pastors, aunts, cousins, but the usual system didn't respond. Some neighbors, who had silently witnessed events on Christmas night, finally spoke. Mrs. Palmer, a neighbor, recounted seeing my daughter walking alone in the cold that night. She almost called the police but didn't know what was happening. Her testimony would become another piece of the irrefutable record. The Ashford family, curated for decades of public image and charity, was unraveling, not from me, but from the truth. Victory and justice. The law, the evidence, and Grandma Ruth's authority converged. The house, the inheritance, the family legacy, all restored to their rightful owners. Some call it manipulation, some call it elder abuse. I call it protecting a child, preserving justice, and respecting the truth. Because when an 89-year-old counts chairs and remembers Christmas, she ensures no child is ever excluded from the table she built for them. The courtroom showdown. Janet and Gerald sat across from us, empty-handed. No lawyer. Their previous attorney had withdrawn after seeing the Airbnb evidence. Janet wore her beige coat and pearls, calm on the surface, nervous underneath. Martin presented the case efficiently. Trust deed, 30-day notice with certified mail receipt, physician affidavit, notarized trust amendment, and the Airbnb documentation. Earning statements, screenshots, reviews, even archived pages. The judge asked Janet plainly, "Did you receive rental income from property held in trust for which you are not the trustee?" Her hands gripped the table. The room was silent. She admitted it. In just 11 minutes, the judge ruled Janet and Gerald had to vacate within 10 days. The court also noted the trust could pursue civil action for the $52,340 she had taken. Real tears came from Janet, not her usual performance, when the reality hit. Move-out day. On a Saturday, Maggie drove by, a rented truck, boxes being carried out, Janet directing from the porch. She took nearly everything, furniture, kitchenware, trophies, but left one photograph of Grandma Ruth in front of the house from 1987, a reminder of what truly mattered. The house felt empty, cold, and quiet when we moved back in. Nora, my daughter, carried her backpack inside the same porch steps where she'd stood alone on Christmas night months earlier. She paused at the door and asked, "This is ours?" "Yes," I said. "Grandma Ruth is letting us take care of it." Rebuilding and healing. Nora picked the upstairs bedroom, twirling with joy. That week, I enrolled her in an art class. She returned with a drawing, a house with 14 chairs, each labeled with family names and a sun shining on every chair. She placed herself at the center, at the big table, not alone anymore. I started therapy, not because I was broken, but to understand the patterns of a family like mine. The past didn't define us. Boundaries and honesty did. The final boundary. A letter arrived from my mother. 8 words, no apology. "Audrey, this has gone far enough. Can we talk?" I filed it with the receipts, transcripts, and court documents. Boundaries were clear now. Knock if you want, but the furniture can't be rearranged. Grandma Ruth, ever steady, reminded me, "I'm not angry at Janet. I'm disappointed, but I won't let disappointment stand above my great-granddaughter's safety. Not ever." Closing. Spring arrived. Nora rode her bike. Mrs. Palmer waved. Maggie brought takeout. The old apartment was behind us, and the door of this house stayed open. Family isn't a seat at a table. It's how people treat you when no one is watching. Some lessons come from Christmas nights spent alone, some from courtrooms, and some from a 10-year-old drawing sons on every chair. Nora learned her place, I learned mine, and the house belonged to the people who deserved it,